Hi, Clara.
Hello,
How are you?
I am well, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for accepting my invitation. It's been a while. It's been a while.
Yes,
But we
yes,
wanted to touch on.
yeah.
Clara, please tell us a bit more about yourself.
Well, I guess from a professional point of view, I had a life focused on the nonprofit sector. I was the founder and chief executive of the Nonprofit Finance Fund, which is a CDFI that I started. It became national in scope over about 35 years. Took a long time to grow, but ended up it still exists. It's going strong. It's about $150 million CDFI with other funds under management. It's national. And it focuses on difficult to focus nonprofit organizations. I left there in 2011 to go to the Heron Foundation as its chief executive, and stayed through 2017. And that was an important experience in that the Heron Foundation, long before I arrived, had been interested in aligning its endowment, which is mainly, for most foundations, conventionally invested and with no interest in investing that money, that 100% of assets for mission. Mm-hmm. They had started and gotten to about 40% before I came. And in my tenure, we basically said, why are we stopping at 40%? Let's just do 100% for mission, and got there. And Heron continues to do that to this day. The idea is to align the entire portfolio of investments in companies, whether it's private equity or debt or whatever it is, with the mission of the organization. In Heron's case, that was an anti-poverty mission. And so that's basically till 2017. Now I'm writing, I'm doing a little consulting, I'm helping some organizations I think are important, and trying to do what I can, because we've got a lot of issues to address in this world.
Indeed. Wow. Thank you. Fantastic. I'm always impressed because I've been following you on social media, on LinkedIn, and you shared a few posts that made me understood that there is a lot to do, particularly focused on the distribution of the assets and know better where to invest, and particularly in poverty, inequality. We spoke about that a lot, but how do you see the current state comparing, to maybe 10, 20 years ago? Is it getting better or worse?
I wish I could say it was getting better. I mean, I think that there are some little glimmers of hope, but I think anybody in philanthropy who sincerely think, and particularly who are fighting poverty, and this was a US-based and US-focused foundation, understand that inequality has increased a great deal in my lifetime, certainly in the United States, and is becoming more and more stubborn. Mm-hmm. And that has to do, in my opinion, to some extent with the rules of the game. And the rules of the game make it very difficult for people who start at a certain point to go up the scale. That was not the promise of the United States of America when I was a kid. And so that's a very sad thing. Mm-hmm. And then on top, there's various other things layered on top of that, the climate change issue, all these other things that are part of the same problem, I think.
Yeah, it's getting even bigger. I've been traveling a lot for the past few weeks, and I've met a lot of people talking about the inequalities, particularly between West and East and North and South. And
Yes.
on the roadmap, I don't feel as a feedback that we have enough policies and regulations to bound a bit more, the path towards building more sustainable basements, and it's something that doesn't seem to require more money or more investments. I'm talking here about having the wide view and know better what we need and where we should invest and push the button. And it seems that I'm in front of many walls and many lack of. I don't believe in the lack of knowledge. I think it's maybe a denial. One of my previous podcasts with Gwen Shu told me that it's much more about a mindset to adapt and a paradigm shift. But how do you see that state evolving from your perspective?
Well, some of it is about a mindset. I think that I can speak about the United States. I think that, but I can say from my point of view, a big part of it is about what I like to call the plumbing, the kind of invisible architecture of the economy, the invisible rules of the economy, things are very nerdy things, accounting, accounting rules, the Securities and Exchange Commission rules about what public companies are should be telling investors about their operations and their products and a variety of other things. And some of it is about this idea that fiduciary responsibility has only to do with a small pot of money and has only to do with finance, which I don't think actually was ever true. I think people used Milton Friedman, who was a US economist, who basically said the duty of a corporation is to make money for its owners, some version of that. And then that's turned into companies are not allowed to look at anything except maximum profitability, or else they're kind of violating their fiduciary responsibility. Well, this was never true. And ethics and governance and a variety of other things come into the picture, but it was never true anyway. So I think it's convenient for some people to pretend that that's true, and changing both the attitudes that feed that and the rules that have come to feed that is important, or is an important piece of the puzzle, because people are hiding. People who manage lots of money, people who have a lot of power, are hiding behind these kinds of rules, which push a short-term economy that is bad for people who, especially those people who are on the bottom, and that's an increasing number.
A very, very direct question, but you spoke about those leaders hiding behind the curtains. What do you think about Larry's Fink recent letter?
Look, I think I am basically a fan of Larry Fink. I think that he's not the emperor of the world. I think a lot of the critiques of him have to do with people saying, well, then change everything, Larry. Well, this isn't, you're just talking through your hat and you're trying to pacify your investment, your people you're managing money for. I think he's trying to walk a very fine line. And he has a lot of, some of his colleagues and maybe some of his clients are pension funds and sovereign wealth funds around the world who are saying, hey, wait a minute, we're long-term. We're about, I had a conversation way back with the head of a California state teachers pension fund. And he said, look, we're talking California, healthy lifestyle, right? We're talking teachers, mostly women, right? We have, over 300 pensioners who are over 100 years old.
Wow.
We can't be looking at the short term. we can't be, sort of trying to have the biggest profitability in the short term. We want companies that are there for the long term. And he said, I don't want to be handing a check to a pensioner in her burned backyard in, whatever, in climate disaster. So yeah, there's a lot of things. If we can start getting the long-term voices in the capital markets to have more force, I think it'll be good for all of us.
Indeed. Do you think that we need to raise voices with the pension funds more particularly, or, I mean, there is still a lot of space to address, and I feel that we don't do enough, or we're not enough doing and practically assessing everything that's, I mean, the list is long here. Not only
the list is long. I wrote a piece that just came out yesterday. I think I might have sent it to you in Impact Alpha, which is one of the outlets in the US. Yeah. And it was basically aimed at CEOs who are saying, we're for, we want to think long term. It's for Larry Fink. It's for Jamie Dimon, who's the chief executive of JP Morgan Chase. It's all these people who are saying we're doing things, we're leading on this carbon issue, and who in fact are not only not doing things, they're actually doing negative things. And so getting folks to walk their talk, to have the courage to walk their talk, would be a really good thing. And I think it's something people want them to do. It's going to be hard, it's complicated, but the sooner we start on the carbon transition and the idea that there is essentially the most important stewardship job, the most important fiduciary job any of us has, is preserving the earth. That is job one. If anybody, in philanthropy, we like to talk about perpetuity, right? Well, guess what? We are all 100% invested in human extinction, and that's a perpetuity also. So let's have ourselves invest in a perpetuity that's about human survival. It's really, yeah. So, and that's a natural perpetuity. It's not just about companies, and it's about people realizing how much, and companies realizing how much they depend on the earth and on other people.
Yeah, I have a feeling, again, after meeting so many people, that they try to find a model for the transition that they can't really figure out as of now, because they can't realize the revenues that they're going to get on the long term, much more of a not only a survival kit, but to know today how to make ROI on something that they're going to have to leave, and to provide space for innovation, research, changing the focus of their assets on something that is going to be, how should I become a better ancestor, is about perpetuity. But I don't feel still as of now that people have the focus and the culture on that. It's about profit, and we're still, still in the pandemic, and we still see a lot of lives, away with the war currently going on in Europe, and I feel that people don't mind thinking efficiently and in a sustainable way. Still, it's really difficult, particularly corporate.
Right. I mean, I can tell you because I'm old, I can tell you this. Actually, the beginning of NFF was something called the Energy Conservation Fund. This was back in the late 70s, early 80s. Energy prices in the United States, especially natural gas prices, were skyrocketing. interest rates were tracking oil prices internationally. One of the first donors to what the precursor of NFF was, called the Energy Conservation Fund, was Federation of Jewish Philanthropies of New York. And they were saying, you know what? We think that doing something about energy conservation in the United States is important because all of this energy instability, all of this oil instability threatens Israel. And that was then. This is now.
Wow.
All of those things, the idea of the soft path that was Amory Lovin's sort of thing, and the work of Donella Meadows, the work of a lot of people back then, if we had done then about getting off oil, it would have been a very much more stable world right now.
Yes, indeed.
There's just no question about that. And here we are. And what's kind of interesting, to go back to Larry for a minute, is one of his pronouncements recently, which is globalism is over. Everybody's going to kind of retreat into their own economies because there's too much risk to look at global supply chains and so on and so forth. I'm not sure that that's totally true, but I do see there's this thing happening because of the Ukraine and because of Russia.
Yeah, there is somehow something to get back to the local economy, if I can say. I'm not sure actually if it's going to be more of a trend or something that is going to remain, at the horizon. But I do believe that people are impacted. That's what's happening around in the environment.
Yeah, and I do think that, getting back to your question about people don't know what to do, they don't know what to invest in, they're kind of lost. And I think that's fair. I think this is a time of great uncertainty. But at the same time, at least over here, I see a lot of people just getting on with it. Farmers in the Midwest who are not necessarily, they don't necessarily believe in climate change, but the weather's funny, and they're doing carbon capture farming. There, local economies up and down, there's farms up and down the Hudson Valley here in New York that never existed, 5 or 10 years ago. Right. And I have a feeling this is kind of, and there are various other things happening in technology. I think the answer is there's no one thing. There's no predictability here. And that's what investors are worried about, because we've had such predictable markets for so long. We've had this nutty idea that that's what we can expect. But of course, it never has been, really.
This uncertainty is felt. I'm advising a few startups, and one particularly that is photographing getting back to your point, the farms in South Africa, and we can see clearly the impact of the climate change. First of all, because the pictures are getting in better quality, so we can see seeds, we can see clearly the crops, and we can see also the delays. And the supply chain is absolutely delayed in some sort of, we're not talking about weeks, we're talking about months of delays. And not only because of what's happening in the environment, in between humans, but also because the air and the water and the seas are impacted. So all the biosphere has changed dramatically for the past 100 years, since even maybe before the revolution, the Industrial Revolution. But the thing here is that we have the proof and we cannot deny it. And I agree with you. The fact that there is uncertainty on one way is frightening the investors. But on the other side, I think that the responsibility of the investors has to be focused on how can we engage and make things maybe less predictable, but focus on assets that are going to be focused on sustainability, tech for sustainability, for instance, and how can we through solutions and improve the investments and the returns, not only the returns.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I think that's it. I think that we are in the climate emergency. It's not going to happen some other time. This is it. And I think Paul Hawkins said something really interesting. He came out with a Regeneration book recently, which I dip into. I can't say I've read it cover to cover, but one of the kind of operating principles he has that I think is so powerful is that you make decisions thinking about life first. And if investors started thinking about life first, it might change a lot of what they're investing in. Agricultural technology that is sustainable, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's where we are. And I think that if you're invested in a public company that doesn't have a robust plan and measurement system that is credible for a carbon transition, dump it. Invest in somebody who does, or something else.
Yeah.
Because those guys are going to go down and take all of us with them, unfortunately. And I think that I don't know. I just think it's not going to be investors. Enterprises are the place that money gets turned into technology, that money gets turned into mission, or money gets turned into goods and services or things that are helpful.
Yeah.
And it's a whole new world now. So I admire people who are the entrepreneurs of the future today, because they have a very tall order.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, one last question, and thank you for highlighting these points, because I think that it's essential and we need to repeat that many, many times. I've been involved in the tech industry for the past 20 years, so I can tell I saw the evolution, and I'm happy and glad to see that things are slowly moving forward, but it's not in a way that I wish it could be. But it's like do you think the ESGs, so many people are talking about, and
thinking about a name,
but do you think somehow that the ESGs applications that we see, adoption, if there's any, are going to solve or start solving some issues in a really realistic way?
I think it is one leg in the stool. It is not the whole solution. I mean, accountants may be going to save the world, perhaps, or at least contribute to it, but just doing that accounting doesn't mean that there's forward motion. We need to price carbon. There's a whole long litany of things that we need to do. And we need to get regulation that squares with the accounting. We need to make sure that it doesn't just stop at things that are simply financially material for companies, although that's important to link to that sensibility in the market, but that go farther than that and have a broader view of products, supply chain, second and third order effects. And are linked to climate science itself in real time, which is a big challenge.
Yeah.
But there are people taking that on, which is hopeful. so that at least we know where we are and can make decisions appropriately. But that's not going to, all by itself, that's not going to do it either. It's going to be everybody doing a lot of different things. And, you know, as Desmond Tutu, somebody told me, said to me, you know, are you an optimist, Clara? And I said, you know, and I quoted Desmond Tutu, who said, I am not an optimist. I am a prisoner of hope. And I think that defines the way I feel.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Clara. Wonderful.
It's been a pleasure. And can I just make a shout out to my beloved cousin on Sde Beaucaire, Brenda Habshush, who I would love to see, but maybe, who knows, she might hear this.
So thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna have probably more podcasts, and I highly appreciate your time, and thank you for sharing your knowledge. It's important. You're always invited, and I'm happy we've made this one. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.